I call the meeting to order at 5:30. I am vice chair of the commission and I'm opening and starting the meeting in the absence of Commissioner Sauer, who we expect shortly. She's tied up in heavy traffic, but we expect her any moment. When she does arrive, I will relinquish the chair to the chair. Okay, with that having said, as far as the roll call goes, we have present in the room Commissioners Case, Hart, and myself, and online we have Commissioner Hedgewood. Commissioner Brown is excused, and as I indicated, Commissioner Sauer is en route. And we have a quorum, so with that, we'll move into the land acknowledgement and begin our agenda. So I'll just go on and read it. We, the city of Lacey, are on the ancestral land of the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek, including in the Nisqually Indian tribe and the Squaxin Island tribe. We acknowledge and remember those tribal people not recognized today who were absorbed or relocated into other tribes for survival. We recognize the ancestors and their descendants who are still here. We recognize and respect the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek as the traditional stewards of this land since time immemorial, and their role today in taking care of these lands in perpetuity. We recognize and have the responsibility to call attention to the histories of dispossession, forced removal, and abridged treaty rights that allowed our nation, state, and city to develop as they have today. We recommend that community members read the Medicine Creek Treaty of 1854. With that, we would move then into approval of the agenda, the previous meeting minutes, and the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Motion to move the previous agenda as written.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Hart and seconded by Commissioner Case. Any discussion?
Vice Chair, if I could just to clarify, the motion is for the agenda and the previous minutes and consent item?
Yes, please.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Did Commissioner Hedgewood disappear?
It looks like we currently do not have a quorum
I
at
just
this
happened
point in
to
time.
glance up there and see our fourth person had disappeared from the meeting.
So Vice Chair, I would recommend we wait just a second because he is walking in the door.
Very good.
Done that one myself.
That's why you just,
We have a quorum again.
okay,
Perfect timing.
yes, yes. It's been moved and seconded that the agenda, previous meeting minutes and the consent items be approved. And with no further discussion, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And that takes us into our public comment period. We have 0 persons present in the audience who wish to address us, and we have 0 persons pre-registered to speak to us by Zoom. Therefore, we'll continue with the remainder of the agenda. And we also see that there were 0 written public comments that were received for the commission today. And we're glad Commissioner Hedgewood made it because he is providing us with our inspirational item today.
I am grateful to be able to give it in person. Vice Chair.
We're grateful to have you in person. Thanks, John.
So originally, my plan was to quote somebody from the LGBTQ plus community because it is Pride Month. However, given the latest actions by the current national administration, I felt it appropriate to specifically address, for those that may not be aware, the US Navy named ships and the class of those ships after the first ship that is a part of that class of ships, if that makes sense. Perhaps in simpler terms, when they have a new ship out, the first ship that gets made is named that, and then the entire class is then carries the same name for that class of ships. That being said, the USS John Lewis was the first ship in the class of ships known as the Lewis class. And the Department of Defense is now making efforts to rename the USS Harvey Milk who is somebody that I quoted last year during Pride Month, who is a US Navy veteran and a prominent civil rights leader and LGBTQ advocate. Famously one of the first publicly elected gay officials, or openly gay, I should say, officials in the United States. Anyway, with that being said, I felt it appropriate to quote the late, great Representative Lewis.
Before you do that, why did you make the change? What rationale did you?
The entire class of I'm glad you asked. The entire class of Lewis ships are all named after very prominent civil rights leaders from various historically marginalized communities, including the Black and African American communities, the queer and LGBTQ plus communities, Mexican American communities and immigrant communities, et cetera, so on and so forth. So the USS Harvey Milk is the first one that is on the quote chopping block to be renamed, and I suspect it will not be the last, unfortunately. So do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful, be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. And hearkening to that same quote, when he spoke on an exhibit at the Library of Congress that was titled Rosa Parks in Her Own Words, he is quoted as saying, "Rosa Parks inspired us to get into trouble, and I've been getting into trouble ever since. She inspired us to find a way to get in the way, to get in what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. She kept on saying to each one of us, you too can do something. And for people, if you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, do something. We cannot afford to be quiet."
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Very appropriate.
Not so too.
Yep. Very, very appropriate at this time. Thank you, John. That takes us to item 7, our business items, the first being language access plan review and language service update. Veronica.
You. Good. Well, just wanted to tell you that we finally have our language access plan, something that we've been working on for several months. We attached it to your packet, so I don't know if you had a chance to review it, but if you have a chance to review it in the next coming days and send me any comments, any suggestions. The plan is in a draft form. So we have been working together, Shannon, Rick, Leilani, the HR director, and myself on it. And yeah, it's something that we really needed and that we're very happy that we finally have. We decided to go to a plan first, and then as things progress, we will work on a policy. But we want to try the plan and implement the plan first. So that's in terms of the language access plan. And then for language services, we have very good news. So we have something that you will see here. It's 2 posters. One is, we call it Know Your Rights. So it's that our customers can see what their rights are. And it's in different languages. There's like 15, I'll pass them around, but it's like 15 languages. And what is very important is the thing on the bottom. This is in order to be in compliance with the Civil Rights Act. We have also information where people can contact us to file any complaints or questions or suggestions. These other poster, we have also distributed in all our point of contact or customer service points of contact. We have also the posters here, if we call it language or I speak, so our customers can point at the language when they need an interpreter, they can point at the language and then we will get the interpreter to them by phone or something that we just started by video. So we were able to get an app that all our staff has in their cell phones. And with this app, we'll see a video about it, but you just click on it and you have a list in the home screen of like 250 languages, including ASL, which is why we wanted to have video, because we didn't have a lot of, it was hard for us to get ASL interpretation. So with this one, we have 24/7, every day of the year, anytime. And there's even a way of scheduling interpreters if we know in advance. So we're super proud. Like I said, every single employee has it on their cell phones. And then we also got 8 iPads. So all our points of like all the customer service or the points of contact with our customers, they also have the iPad so that they would see it in a larger screen, including our community center and animal services is also gonna get that this week. So yeah, that's something that we're very proud of. And John, I don't know if you can hear me, but could you play the video for the interpretation app, please? Yeah.
I'm gonna sub in here for John. John's not
so-
here.
Oh, okay.
So we'll share the video and then why don't, after the video, let's go over what's in the draft policy too. And I pulled it up so that you can.
The draft plan?
Yep, and walk through what's in there.
Okay.
Welcome to Language Line Insight. Quickly connect to 9,000 professional interpreters on demand in video and audio. Insight eliminates language barriers to help grow your business and better serve your communities. It's fast, reliable, and secure. Insight is the fastest and easiest way to access trained interpreters in video for the top languages, including American Sign Language, as well as hundreds of languages in audio whenever and wherever you need them. Simply download the app, authenticate the first time, and you're ready to connect. Open the Insight app, scroll Top Languages or All Languages, or search by language name or country. Tap the desired language, and tap again to initiate a video or audio call. For video calls, position the screen to ensure the customer is centered. To help ensure a successful interpretation, make sure the volume is at the desired level both on the device and with the in-app volume adjustment. This ensures you can easily understand the interpreter. Introduce yourself, then brief the interpreter about the call. This helps your interpreter understand your goal. Speak directly with the customer, not the interpreter. This is the fastest, most efficient way to communicate. Give the interpreter time to interpret. The interpreter may ask you or your client for clarification to ensure accuracy. Sentences may seem longer because some concepts have no equivalent in other languages. Speak in short sentences. Avoid jargon or complex terminology. This facilitates complete interpretation and accuracy. Check for understanding. Ask the interpreter to use the notepad feature to emphasize or confirm key information. The interpreter can type in English or the target language. When the call is completed, thank the interpreter and end the call by tapping the red phone icon. And don't forget to rate your call at the end. 5 stars is the best. To view your call history, a schedule of video interpreter availability, or to place a test call, go to the Help and Settings icon. Technical assistance is available 24/7, 365 days a year. It's that easy to bridge language barriers and build relationships in any language. Thank you for using Language Line Insight.
Really great.
I can just see somebody at the park, you know, and park service person, you know, getting a question and just doing this and, you know, anywhere in the service area.
In the police department,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
they do
yeah.
calls. The only thing, for example, with the iPads, we need to have those when there's Wi-Fi. But the cell phones, it will be, as long as there's reception, it'll work on the cell phones.
That's great. Long time coming, it's here.
Yeah,
How widely used in other areas in the community is this tool? Are we the first again?
I think so.
That's
Olympia doesn't have it, I'm 100% sure, and Tumwater doesn't have it either.
We have like the telephonic survey, but service part of it, but
Yeah,
I think this is a really big step of having the video casting.
yeah.
And it being kind of on demand versus like something you have to schedule or.
Great.
I asked the city of Olympia, because I was meeting with them last week, and they have they have it by phone, but they do have a contract actually with the same company. But the person who does contracts in finance is the one managing it, so the staff doesn't really know a lot
Okay.
about the availability and how to use it. But they do have a contract with them for telephonic interpretation.
Great. Great. Any discussion, questions of Veronica or Shannon on this, on the language? Shannon?
I was just gonna say, if we could, Vice Chair, maybe we could spend a little bit more time going over what's in the policy. I know Veronica just briefly introduced it, but I've got it pulled up and Veronica
Okay.
could walk us through what's in there and
Sure.
see if there's any
Sure.
discussion that might be spurred on
Great.
that.
Let the record show that the meeting has been joined by both Commissioner Sauer and Commissioner Garza.
So Veronica, the mouse is right there. If you just
Oh,
want to
sorry.
walk us through, I've
Thank
pulled
you.
this up and now everybody can see it. And again, this is the draft language access plan that Veronica mentioned briefly, just to give a little bit more background and overview of what's in it.
So this is the first time I'm doing this. I need a little bit of guidance. Do we read everything or just like mention the different topics?
Just going over the high level portions of it, of what's in it. And, you know, again, everybody received this information previously, so they can provide some feedback if there's anything that jumps out to the commissioners.
Okay. So, well, we just started with some introductions about why is this important. I think the main part is that this is part to be in compliance with the Title VI of Civil Rights Act of 1964. We had other other laws and regulations, but we updated that because there's been so much changes in the federal government that we just think this is the most appropriate. And this is really to serve what is called limited English proficiency communities, or it's mostly immigrant communities who are underserved. And it's to give them equal access to all cities' services and mostly services and tools. We have a section with definitions, and all are based on mostly translation and interpretation services. So what is language access? What is an interpreter? What is an interpretation? These are in alphabetical order, but it's limited English proficiency. And then, well, multilingual staff, meaningful access, because that's what we want to give, meaningful access to our customers. Source language, for example, for translations and interpretations. The target language, something that we're going to be working on in the near future, I hope, is what we call vital documents. And I know this is a very extensive definition, but I wanted to capture everything because this is what is going to allow us to provide also like the second level of access to our customers. We need to translate our main documents like forms and documents that our customers use the most into at least 2 languages, which are the most common or demanded. I think it's going to be obviously Spanish and Korean. We don't have the funds to do that now, but we're getting ready and prepared so that we can roll it out hopefully next year when we have the next year's budget. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you guys have it electronically so that it's not so much of a paper and having to reprint things over and over again?
So there are forms that are, if they are in our website, for example, we will have them electronically in the website once they're translated. Some of the things that I want to implement, for example, it's a language access complaint form. So yes, that would be electronically and it will be translated into different languages. So the way I see it, it hasn't happened yet, but the way I see it, it'll be in the website, the public website. Do you see the one in English and then a drop-down menu to select the language for the translation?
I also have a question about your multilingual staff.
Yes.
Is there any like a goal or plan to hire or ensure that certain multilingual staff within your staff level? 1%, 2%, 10%. Obviously, we have Hispanic and Korean and other lingual community. Just wondering if you have staff that will serve the community.
I know HR has in their goals to increase the diversity of the hiring pool. But that's really gonna be up to them. We have had discussions about giving like an additional percentage to the multilingual staff when they are doing duties in the second language, but we don't have the budget for that yet. So right now what we're doing, it's like, for example, myself, if I need to speak with someone in Spanish, it is what it is. Or the police department has the same. No, I think the police department, they do have a little percent, 3%, right? That they do, when they're bilingual, they do pay a 3% additional, but it's only the police department. The rest of the departments is just on a voluntary basis. And we have to be very careful that it's not it's burdensome. So, because they have to still keep with their duties, right? Keep up with their duties. Yeah, in a perfect world, it would be great, but yeah, we're still a little bit limited, but little by little, we'll be changing.
In the hiring process, as you're crafting job descriptions and duties and criteria, are you beginning to include something like bilingualism encouraged? I mean,
Not yet.
not yet.
No, not yet.
So if all other qualifications are equal, and here's one who's also bilingual in another language,
I'm guessing it would give them, and I said I'm guessing, it will give them an advantage, but it also will depend on the qualifications. So we don't have a policy yet that says, for example, increase the point, I don't know, give them an extra point because they're bilingual, or we don't have anything like that yet.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in. And so exactly what Veronica was saying is currently that's not something that's part of kind of how we build our job descriptions. And various departments have also had, just questions about, what are, qualifications and preferred qualifications. But I think that is something that we can always pass on to our human resources team as they're looking in the future about their hiring processes. And that's one of the things we did identify in the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging strategic plan, is to continuously evaluate those types of things. So I'm happy to pass on, that information and that question.
So if the work experience is all equal, the education is all equal, the experience is all equal, and then here's this other element that's needed in the workplace, and here's a person that, in addition to the basics, here's a qualified bilingual person that brings that much more. And, but it does call for a reexamination of the way job descriptions are worded.
I think
Just a thought.
it's difficult because with our current budget, we cannot pay anything extra or in addition for the second language. So because we don't have a way of compensating for that economically, we cannot ask for it.
I think
No,
it's also.
I'm not even asking for
Yeah.
extra compensation.
But if
I'm
it's
just
all
talking
the
about,
same, it totally
job
makes sense.
qualifications
It would
and
totally make
ability
sense.
level, not extra compensation per se. But, it might attract a different category of applicants. Well, I just toss it out there as a.
Yeah.
No, I agree 100% with you. Yes.
Especially if the job needed it. I mean, if the job was front desk or something like that.
Yeah, I think job is needed because you have obviously the community base where there's a number of community members that speaking in different language, have a different culture, so the lived experience need to make a difference. Even if they are little less qualified, it's according to that standard. But the amount of what they can help, their output will be so much greater. So that I think that definitely need to make it into consideration that, what is less qualified? They are overqualified in lived experience, and they have a connection in the community, they have network. They'll be able to make things that just qualified person would not be able to do. So to me, that is the eye of DEI. We need to be an advocate of what does that mean as a less qualified? For your standard, maybe it's less qualified, but it's the other way it is. So I just want to say that out loud, and we need to be an advocate for that, where the people who are working in this type of capacity need to be able to serve the community that represent. So I know that's not the avenue for this, but I'm taking full opportunity to say that out loud.
If I could add on to that, and I think it's really good points that you all are bringing up, and I think one of the benefits of having the language line, and I think Veronica is gonna get into this a little bit in the future, is having dashboard information on what languages we're interacting with so that we can make more informed decisions in the future. So if you recall in the plan last year, when we adopted it, we had the breakdown based on telephonic service of who was being used. And so we'll be able to track this in the future, who's on their iPads, communicating with community members. What does that look like? At what rate, what level? And so we'll have a better sense of data after the first couple of years. We know kind of holistically, just based on census information, but it'd be really helpful for us to see who are we interacting with on a daily basis out in the community. And so we'll get some better information and data on that to help kind of craft and inform, future conversations.
Yeah. Another thing, while we're on this topic, that the people that I know of wouldn't really contact the city knowing there's nobody there to speak to them. So if you're gonna just look at the data, how many people are actually contacting us? What's the reason they're not contacting us is also something that we need to look into, because people will just call friends and, the network within their, instead of coming directly to the source of the information. Because I've worked for the government for a long time, and that's constantly the number one reasons they don't come to here, because they don't expect there's somebody there speaking the language they speak, and they be able to get the service like something from your friends or somebody like that. So your stats is not accurate.
Sure. No, and I think that's a really good point, and I think that's just a starting point for us, but that is absolutely true. And that's, again, one of the reasons why we want to make this service available. We want to get this information out that we have it, but we also are going to continue to look at programs like, the community messenger program, where we can work with, folks who are trusted messengers in the community, maybe speak languages that are preferred, so that we can get that dialogue going. But you bring up a really good point, Chair.
And it really amplifies the point I was trying to make about as we look in the future, because we have to ask ourselves the question, what are we willing to do differently if we're truly engaged in this equity journey? That business as usual won't work as we're moving forward into the future. And the examination of how we word things on job descriptions could be the difference in exclusion or inclusion. And so it's a whole new territory for HR kind of people to be into, but we can't have the rhetoric over here without a change in the instruments and the process and procedure over here. And so as the population continues to grow and the service need, let's say public works, we're gonna need 15% more folk in public works in the next 10 years. As that changes, then how much the job description for that? Because bilingual, culturally competent city employees is what we want, but how do we get them? It can't be the same old worded job description and the same old
Yep.
recruitment and outreach efforts. Got to do something differently
Yeah.
if we accept a different applicant pool from which to choose employees of the future. And that's not displacing anyone to make room for them. It's just looking at new folk, retirement, death, relocation. So that's where the opportunities come. And so, so this language thing is, and more than language, but cultural competency, which includes language. How do we get the folk we say we need? But I think we're headed in the right direction. It doesn't happen overnight, but just to have it as a discussion point at this point, talking about language, every chance we get, we have to bring it up so we keep it front and foremost in all our minds.
Exactly.
Yeah. And to keep it in our staff's minds too. That's also very important. Okay, so we have as the first component, just that we're offering interpretation and translation services. The police department has authorized interpreters, so as I mentioned. And now we have the Insight also app available. We have the self-identification card that we've mentioned here too. So these are just some points for our staff to know how to interact with the LEP customer. So inquiring the language, self-identify, point to the language in the poster, or ask a multilingual employee in the case of a police, or qualified interpreter through the app or by phone. With this is just general. So something that it's very important that we're implementing, we're gonna have what we call language access coordinators. I wanted to highlight this because we've been meeting with the executive assistants. So our city manager designated the executive assistants to act as language access coordinators. So they're gonna be working with the equity and inclusion program manager and program to coordinate all the translation and interpretation requests. So for example, when we start translating the vital documents, every department or program will contact them, submit the documents that need to be translated to them, and then they will upload them in a dashboard that the vendor has already created for us. And then that will go for requesting an estimate. And then they can, once they receive the estimate, they can approve the translation or decline it. And then through that dashboard, as Shannon was mentioning, we will be able to track the languages that are the most demanded, which department and all of that. So that it's already, that's the way they have already designed it and how they work with other cities. And so the language access coordinators will be the ones helping us establish all the language access services and directives. It's also trainings, questions, all of that, and they will be always coordinating with me. When we have complaints, the same. We have, well, maybe I'll go. So we have, as we were saying, in terms of notices, we have the posters. We're gonna have it in our internet site. In our intranet side, we have also added all of these tools. So our staff can go and look the training video for the app, everything is already in our intranet site as well. And then we have created this email that is up and running, equity and inclusion at cityoflacy.org for any questions, concerns, complaints, and it's what it's in these posters as well. So this is specifically for anything related to language access. We could probably receive other kinds of complaints in terms of civil rights in general, ADA, but the main function will be for language access. Because civil rights is under HR, not under my program. So this is just some of the responsibilities that the staff has, how they have to identify the customer, how to help them, how to let them know that we have the services, and then arrange for the translation or interpretation. This is also how are we gonna work with the communities. So this is from our strategic plan, just some of the data. How are the communities, what are the largest number of languages and nationalities. So this you have already seen from the strategic plan. It's a screenshot from the strategic plan. So we have Spanish and Korean and then Tagalog. And then how we're deciding which languages we need to select. It's this decision with these factors. So and this is according to DOJ, Department of Justice, the number and proportion of LEP persons served by the city, the frequency in which the person interacts with the city, the nature of the department, how sensitive the information is, and the resources available from us. And then this is the process to translate the vital documents. Like I was mentioning, this is gonna be coordinated through the language access coordinators. And we're not there yet, but this is what we're thinking. We will prioritize applications, consent forms, complaint forms, intake forms, emergency messages, of course, letters, notices about rights, notices of availability of free language assistance, public outreach and education materials, contact information, websites, and press releases. Websites is gonna be a very ambitious project, so this is gonna take several years. Right now, we have some kind of a Google Translate thing, so it's something, but it's not very recommended, not very accurate. We've done so far a couple of surveys that we have translated into Spanish, from English to Spanish and Korean with the help of Chair Sauer. So speaking about the coordinators, this is really their role. I already explained to you, but it just help us manage all requests regarding language services. I already met with them, they are aware, so it's all up and running. Funding, we're gonna be working with our finance department to see, but all of the services will always be, unfortunately, based on the availability of funding. And that's why we're waiting on the vital documents as well. So as part of this is also training the staff. So we have been training the staff, especially on the app lately. We already trained last week all of our customer service staff. They have been, we went through a very thorough training on how to use the app.
Are they excited about it?
Yeah, I actually received a few emails because we also send an all staff email with all the instructions on how to activate the app in their cell phones. So I received 3 emails with some feedback, like they are excited to have the service, and it's not all our staff, obviously, but yeah, I've received good comments, very positive comments.
I'd also say we had a similar enthusiastic response from the city council as well.
Oh, yes, actually, yes. We presented it to the city council last week, and the mayor asked for them to have also the service available in their cell phone, so we already took care of that as well. So council members have it, yes. So, well, this is just how we're gonna be monitoring and keep the plan updated. This is gonna be really a living document. We will have to be reviewing it once a year and updating it with the support of the language access coordinators and obviously the community as well. This is the dashboard that we already mentioned. They provided the dashboard, and they have it for translation and for interpretation services, both. So this is also gonna help us determine, and I know it's a little bit like Commissioner Sauer was saying, Chair Sauer was saying, I see it a little bit of what's first, the chicken or the egg, because the more the community is aware that we have the services, the more demanded they will be. So I guess we need to come up with like a communications plan towards the community to let them know that we have these services. So that would be a good point of a starting point. And every 5 years, we're gonna be doing like a thorough review, obviously, but we will do it on a yearly basis as well. And that's pretty much it.
Right.
Want to stop the share?
Oh, do I do that?
The red box, where?
Oh, of course, sorry. I knew that.
Okay, Kieran, for this.
Hi, Karen.
Hello.
So I,
Yeah.
So yours. Okay.
So, okay, good. It's Veronica.
Part of
you-
it? Is that another part of it?
yes, so letter B, it's an upcoming project that this is very different, changing subjects, not language access, but we were approached by the Thurston County Realtors Association. They want to organize for their members, it's a nonprofit, so they want to organize for their members a first-time homebuyer fair and education event. So we're gonna be helping them. It's gonna take place in November 8th at the Lacey Community Center. It's gonna be mostly like a tabletop show. So they will have, or they will be recruiting the organizations and institutions that will be offering the services. They will also have some people, institutions giving workshops on how to become a first-time buyer, what programs, grants, and all of that are available. The idea is to have like an education one-day event where somebody who doesn't own a house knows how to become or learns the options of how to become a first-time buyer. It's gonna be focused on underserved communities mostly, but it's open to everybody. It's a free event. We're gonna be partnering with other community organizations and nonprofits, mostly the ones that work with us on the DIB Summit, so that we can promote it to the community. So our role would be attract or make it, market it in the community, and then they will bring the people who will serve and bring the options.
I wonder if they invited the Black Home Initiative,
It's coming from them. I don't know, so through the Black Home Initiative, BHI, they referred them to us. So yes, they are.
Sort of.
Mhm,
energizing the realtors.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah, good.
The thing about that Black Home Initiative program, as it's worded, that came down from the legislation, for instance, in this area, if anyone that's a descendant of any Black person who came here before 1968, they qualify. Well,
Different things.
I've been here 54 years. I didn't get here till 71.
Yeah.
So it's very few Black folk who would qualify for the Black Home Initiative. They had to have been connected to somebody that was here before 1968. FYI, I got all excited about that until I read the fine print and said, oh, but it's conjured up some good discussion. And the Realtors Association, is getting very, very actively involved in this. And it's kind of tied to, some historical practices around here that the Realtor Association is finally owning up to. And this research that the University of Washington just completed on racially restrictive covenants in Thurston County, and where there had been 336 properties identified through our Thurston County Auditor's Office, University of Washington has found more than 1,700 properties in Thurston County with racially restricted covenants. So it's all kind of tied to reparations. But for Thurston County, they're very, and this Black Home Initiative, very few folks to step forward trying to be a first-time homeowner that can benefit from this, that are descendants of anyone before 1968. So, I'm glad to see this forum's gonna happen. So I'm really curious about what the Realtors Association and that industry, because at this point, they fess up to the role they played in redlining and exclusionary practices as realtors that resulted in the fact that right now today, City of Lacey and its environs is the most diversified in Thurston County because of those practices that wouldn't show properties in Tumwater and Olympia to Black folk and other folk of color. And so a lot is going on that begins to kind of converge, but you know, first-time home buyers and fair housing forums. It's the fine print we got to read as to how you qualify. And so it'll be very interesting, but thank you, Veronica, for hooking it up.
I'm remembering that there might be two things going on. That Black Home Initiative, I think that is just the partnering. A nonprofit that's just trying to figure out ways to get Black African American families into homes.
Right.
And then there's something, and I don't know what the actual thing calls, that the state just passed.
I can help with that. So that is the Covenant's Home Ownership Act, which was passed in
Covenant Home Ownership.
2023, which is exactly how you described it, Vice Chair.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a good clarification on the.
Two
Black Home
things,
Initiative.
there's the Black Home Initiative at the nonprofit, anybody can partner with,
So,
can.
For these,
have
we
the
included the
resources.
Department of Commerce, so the Department of Commerce is gonna be one of our partners in this event. So they're,
So
they
maybe
have a lot,
both,
yeah.
maybe they'll get information about both those things.
Well, thank you for that, because we'll finally, you know, get some public forum and public discussion going on what's going on here, and what has gone on and why things are like they are. It is what it is, so what do we do about it going forward?
Yeah.
Exactly. That's all for me.
Great.
All right, great. I see community events and celebrations policy review.
Well, good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. I'm here to review the community events and celebration policy with you all. I know this is something that's come before you a couple of times, so I will kind of briefly go over the background, and then we'll take a dive into the draft policy that we've created for you all, with the idea that we'd like to get some feedback, and if there's nothing substantive, to move forward with a recommendation from this body. So just kind of as background, and again, I know you all have heard this, but for anybody who may be watching, so our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging strategic plan identified as one of the goals was to provide services that are responsive, transparent, accountable, equitable, and welcoming, with an emphasis on providing a safe, trusted environment for underserved community members. This was under the goal area of program, policies, and services. In addition to that, we also had under the same goal area, under the subsection of acknowledgement and events, a recognize and support diversity and inclusiveness through acknowledgement statements, public art, events, programs, and the use of city platforms to amplify community voices. And as one of the benchmark areas we had here on number 6, it says number and support of events and programming that highlight cultural diversity increases. And so that's really what is driving us to take a look at some of these programs, in addition to conversations that we had with the council that I'll get to in just a second. But also in the same plan under community access and engagement, we also had a goal to enhance relationships and opportunities in the community for continued dialogue and knowledge sharing among the city, partner entities, and community members through events, programs, forums, art, etc. With, again, number 6 here, the benchmark that we established was the city engages at non-city events increases. So recognizing that the city can't do every single event in the community, but that if we build a network and partnerships together, we can provide more. So in the Commission on Equity's work plan for 2025, and this was something that you all reviewed with the City Council back in January, and the council approved it. What we had under engagement here was to research and consider community celebrations, including LGBTQIA+ and Latino events, and then to make a recommendation in Q4. We're a little bit ahead of the work plan on this item. There's a couple of them where we're going to be playing catch up here in just a second. But this is kind of building off of what was identified in the work plan to find ways that we could do this. We also spent some time previously just discussing some of the events that the city does put on, and this is highlighting our parks, culture, and recreation events, including cultural celebration, which you all have participated in for the last couple of years, Spring Fun Fair, our fireworks spectacular, which is going to be on July 3rd, and so please put that on your calendar, but place to be. Lacey and Tunes, Children's Day, Lacey Loves to Read, just as a couple of examples. We went over some grant programs that the city participates in currently. because we wanted to take a look at these, see where the gaps were and see where we might be able to borrow some of the policies from. And so we looked and talked about our lodging tax program. This is a program, just as a reminder, where the city collects a fee for people who stay at hotels. And the idea is that you take these dollars and you put it into events that bring more tourists from over 50 miles away into the city to participate in events and stay at hotels. And so we talked about the lodging tax program. We also briefly overviewed the HOA neighborhood grant program. So this is a program the city council has offered for a number of years. And effectively, whether you're in an established HOA or even now an informal HOA, so if you get 5 community members together that want to do a program, you can apply for a matched program of up to $2,500. So let's say you had a $5,000 project. If your HOA, formal or informal, could come up with, $2,500, you could apply for the remaining dollars every year. And then finally, we talked about our newest grant program, which was the Human Services Grant Program. And actually, our new Human Service Commission is going to be deliberating this Thursday on recommendations for the 2025 award to move on to council for this program. But the idea is that nonprofit providers in the community can competitively and transparently apply for $300,000 that the city council set aside in the budget for community services here in Lacey and the Lacey urban growth area. So with all of that in mind, we wanted to take a look at a potential grant program that, kept in mind that the city again has limited capacities. We, don't have staff to be able to program events, all of the events that we want to. We talked about fiscal realities when we were talking about language access, and that's certainly something that we need to contemplate of. As the city, we have limited resources, including human resources. We also want something to be sustainable. And so knowing that sometimes, grassroots events are much more sustainable because you already have a community that's behind these events that want to make sure that it continues on in perpetuity, and they can work and network with other partners and stakeholders in support of that event. And then finally, a big thing, as we've highlighted with the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Strategic Plan, is making a process that was transparent and equitable. So creating systems that are open and support procedural outcome fairness. And so those were kind of the 3 things that we took in mind when we were considering what could a grant program look like for cultural events and community events. And at our last meeting, so we looked at this in detail in March, we took a look specifically at, we looked at a couple of jurisdictions to begin with, but then we focused on Bend, Oregon and their programs and what was in their policies. And so you can see they have a community sponsorship and grant program. They've got policies that are written to that, and they also have a dashboard on their website that talks about where the funding is going to, what the program is, what the award was, and when it is, so that community members can connect with that. At that same meeting, we discussed what could be considered in a policy for a program like this to move forward, including what would be the purpose, what would be the process, and just as an example of what we were talking about in the process of having the city council, provide budget funding. So again, be contingent on resources. There would be an application that would be open and available to everybody in the community. It would be reviewed by staff to make sure that it meets the policies. So for example, let's say if, somebody for profit, if that's in the policy applied, then that would be something that would be looked at and weeded out before it reaches the Commission on Equity, who would review it and then make recommendations for funding. That would finally go to the Lacey City Council for their approval. And then there would be a reporting element where the community group would have to, provide some information and data on how the event went and how the dollars were being used. We also talked about eligibility. We talked about fund use, what it could and cannot be used for, transparency and reporting element, and then what kind of level of funding could be possibly available. So I took all of the information that you all provided during this conversation, and we digested it and we wrote a draft policy, and you'll see it as an attachment to the staff report in your materials today. And I'm going to go over it very briefly. So you'll see it has a goal, and the goal is to support a wide range of community and cultural benefits that support the Lacey community. It talks about program requirements, so who can be eligible, and we talked about these, so advancing city council adopted goals, policies, strategic planning, creating a welcoming community, benefiting the diverse communities, creating and maintaining an environment free of discrimination, being open, and not having entry fees was something that I heard from you all of being really important for these events, and then being held here locally in Lacey or the urban growth area. We also talked about the eligible entities being nonprofits, and there was a lot of discussion over what status of nonprofits, and so we have it right in 501c3 status and are registered with the Washington Secretary of State. We talked about ineligible entities, so we talked about religious groups promoting religious purposes, political groups promoting political purposes, and then organizations or individuals that discriminate on the basis of age, sex, race, sexual orientation, gender identity, et cetera, listed all over here. We also have in their language that the city at its discretion will award funding, and it's not guaranteed just because you apply that you're gonna receive everything, recognizing that we often have to make tough decisions on funding and that we can't always fully fund everybody for their requests. We established some maximum and minimum award amounts, with the maximum being 5,000 and a minimum being 500. And part of this is for the purpose of ease of kind of the fiduciary elements. Sometimes if you get really small grants, they can be very onerous for us to process. And so having a minimal threshold is good to establish so that we can make sure that we're making it as effective and efficient for the city. Now, obviously, number 5 is somewhat based on what kind of money that we may be able to get if this proceeds forward with a future budget request. So, starting small may make the most sense for a future budget request, somewhere around, a $30,000 element. So that way we could see what the capacity is for the community and build this over time. We also talked about only allowing one proposal per entity per cycle, and then not having a dollar for dollar match. However, there could be a benefit if the organization showed that there was money going into the event previously. And then that the city will establish a selection process, which includes review by staff and then the recommendations by the Commission on Equity. So if this moves forward, this would be something that on an annual basis would come before this body for recommendations. We also talked about just some requirements of what the nonprofits would need to provide. And then also what are acceptable uses. So acceptable uses being event coordination, so expenses for staff time, advertising, venue costs, equipment, rental, food catering costs, excluding alcohol and permitting fees. And then excluded costs, unacceptable ones would be alcohol, products that promote religion or products that promote political activities. And then we talked a little bit too about, well, what if somebody doesn't move forward with a program, having a probation in there and just saying that you would be ineligible for the following year for grant funding, although there would be accommodations for extenuating circumstances. So let's say, for example, and I hope this isn't the case for any future event, but that there was a really bad wildfire and the smoke AQI was really high and we really didn't want community members to be outside during that period of time. That could be one of those extenuating circumstances that we would review. And then also on that final element, that transparency of having a reporting mechanism and making sure that that is part of what we show the community, but also what this body would review as it's making its recommendations. So that was a really quick overview of a lot of conversations that we've had over the last couple of months. Our recommendation would be to recommend the draft community events and celebration policy to the Lacey City Council. But I'd love to get any feedback or other comments that we may have missed and have some discussion about that.
The point of concern that I have, as far as maybe it being more accessible to people that are interested in coordinating events in our community. I think that the requirement for it to be a 501c3 might be limiting. And perhaps it's not, but maybe there's a way that we can bake into our recommendation that like we can approve like non-501c3s in like a case by case, perhaps, like given whatever the event merits are, et cetera. I would be maybe hesitant to just say like anybody, but like maybe not necessarily having to be a 501c, that's preferred, but then like, others can be made an exception or something like that would maybe be something I would suggest, I think. And who knows, maybe we get like a 300 people applying that are all 501c3s and it's like, okay, well, clearly we have enough interest from 501c3s and we are not accepting non-501c3s, but if we get one 501c3 and then a bunch of other great ideas that are not nonprofits, we should still be able to consider this. I don't wanna hamstring us, if that makes sense, into kind of a corner. But that's just me, I guess.
That's a great one to me.
But it's pretty standard in a lot of grant applications, and it usually specifies you must have a 501c3 or evidence that you have a fiscal agent that has one if you don't.
Sure.
And so something about fiscal agency, I think needs to be added there. And to me, that's about the only way you can get around not being a 501c3 yourself, but you have a fiscal agency relationship with someone who is. And that fiscal agent has to show their 501c3 documentation and all that stuff. But it allows for some clear reporting. So that would be the only thing there under eligible entities would be something about or evidence of a fiscal agent relationship. And that would be in keeping with what most grant applications require. If you're not one, who are you working with that is one, you know?
Done all the time.
Yeah, it happens all the time, but that's the only thing I see missing that would somewhat address the issue that John is talking about.
Yeah, mine's mostly just, I know that the 501c3 process, even just at the state level, is not straightforward and it certainly takes time. And so maybe there's a community organization that's interested in doing an event, but you know, the 6 to 9 months that it takes to make that process go through, even just to hire a fiduciary agent, may be a limiting
Well-
factor in an event.
Yeah, it's like, you know, we wanna have a LGBTQ something. Those organizers go to somebody like Pizza Clutch or Flag, who are already established 501s and say, can we get under your?
Well, to the same example, though, let's say like, you know, Sway Night Market, they had their Pride Market Depot thing, but they're a for-profit company. They're not a 501c3. But let's say they wanted to expand that to have like a full-on Pride event, not just a Pride themed event at the rack instead of the train depot. But because they're not a 501c3, they can't apply, and maybe the owner doesn't want to deal with a fiduciary agent or whatever that is, but it would still be a really cool event. And we may be interested as a commission in making that event successful. And I don't know what that looks like, right, on how to maybe make that happen, and that's just an example. But yeah, I would just wanna leave, I guess, the possibility. That's what I'm getting at, I suppose. And I understand that there may be some like legal implications, we may need to consult counsel on what implications that may look like for our funding and what restrictions we have to have versus ones that are nice to have, or that are kind of standard for grant applications, like our vice chairs mentioned.
So I think it's a really good point, and I want to highlight too that, you know, again, we have different pots of money, right?
Sure.
So the lodging tax, for example, you can be a for-profit business and go for dollars for tourism events, such like that. So I think that's also a consideration to think about. I did hear kind of the or fiscal agency evidence of a nonprofit, and I think that could be something that could certainly be added to that subsection 9B.
I would also say, to your point, Shannon, my understanding is that the lodging tax applications are kind of at capacity, and a lot of it is the city competing against itself. And that's from my time as a commission, or representing the commission on our the parks and development, I forget this long of a thing now.
The park
Yeah,
improvement funding work group.
That thing, but with it, I was also starting from other commissioners, some of which were on the lodging tax board. Who specifically told me like, yeah, those funds are effectively spoken for, and even then, we still have like 16 to 20 applications, and 10 get approved, and like of the 10, like 8 are from the city. And then like the other half are also from the city, but again, they're all competing against each other, and it's very much spoken for. So I understand that it is a possibility, however, maybe not as likely as it could be, I guess.
Maybe just to clarify some comments in there of number one, the city does not have 8 or so applications that gets approved through LTAC, and it's less than, 50% of all of the LTAC dollars. But I think to what you're trying to the point you're trying to make is we have seen an increase in LTAC requests over the last couple of years. And I think if you look through time, we never have enough funding for all of the LTAC requests that are coming in. I think that is a very true point. And that's very similar with, you know, a lot of our grant programs, including our HOA grant, as well as our human services grant. So, you know, on Thursday, we'll be going through over $800,000 of requests for $300,000 of money. And so that their tough decisions do have to be made and prioritized. And that's why one of the things, you know, we wanted to make sure was in this process was an advisory group such as yourselves to be able to go through and make a recommendation. And that's the same thing we have with the LTAC commission that you just mentioned, as well as our human services commission.
And I also think that if we had another line that talked about fiscal agency kind of thing, it encourages coordination and collaboration in a community. So we don't have all these entities out there operating on their own, but if they are like organizations like that, you know, seek out, you know, who's similar to us in this community that have a 501c3 and we don't. Let's seek them out and see, can we partner? See, can we collaborate with them? So, you know, we just gotta do something differently if we wanna change the way it is.
Which
You
is
know?
very similar to how we made the DEI summit for Thurston County happen.
Exactly.
Because it was community led, but a lot of the fiscal transactions occurred through the legal women voters.
Mhm.
Because they are a 501c3, whereas
That's
a lot of the other community organizations that were part of the planning process are not.
Mm.
So.
So with that one thing about fiscal agency, everything else looks fine for me as far as moving forward for it to, if that's.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's definitely another avenue at a minimum, so.
Well, then commission, if I could, then maybe recommend a motion for an amended policy that includes that additional sentence on fiscal agency as a recommendation. That would, could be a next step you would want to take.
Sure.
Yeah.
I move then that we amend the draft policy under eligible entities to include the addition of fiscal agency sponsorship as well.
Second.
So it is moved. Any discussion?
No, I think we got it all out of the way before.
So to confirm the first and the second, we're on amending it and then making the recommendation to council on the policy, correct?
Yes.
So do we say all in favor, say aye, or do we do that?
Mhm.
Aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, so then I don't have any or approved.
All right, great. Thank you.
All right, great. Let's move on to commissioner reports, and that is Dr. Jackson.
Well, the city of Lacey presented a Juneteenth proclamation to the Thurston County NAACP prior to, that was at their Tuesday, week before last, I think it was, or maybe last week. It was greatly appreciated. Members came. It was accepted by President Larry Jefferson. And a number of executive board members were here in his support, and it went quite well. We appreciated it deeply.
So I have a question. Why are we not doing Juneteenth event this year? Not like, you know, our going strict with, is there something we can learn about, know about?
Sure.
If I may, really quick, not specifically on the subject of why the Fred U. Harris Lodge chose not to work for the city this year, but I can comment that a lot of Juneteenth organizations or organizations that have done Juneteenth events in the past have scaled back this year. And that a lot of them are doing it very intentionally. Some of it is because they've had withdrawal from sponsorships. Other ones, it's safety concerns or the visibility of the events in their communities. Or even just the, I don't want to say desire, but I don't know, taking respite, shall we say.
Energy level.
There's a lot of other things happening and it's just not the time for it. And so I just wanted to say that, but I know Shannon had something else to add, probably specifically to the Fred U. Harris Lodge, I would imagine.
Sure, yeah. So, the city reached out to see if we could continue the partnership for this year, and Fred U. Harris Lodge leadership declined to have us partner this year. And I think part of it was, some of the things that Commissioner Hedgewood highlighted, but, certainly would leave that open for the Fred U. Harris Lodge to speak with. But I think one of their concerns was just the size of the event in previous years. And so we want to keep an open door to partner in the future, whether with the Fred U. Harris Lodge or with another organization for Juneteenth.
And I would just add to those comments that, yes, it will return, not maybe as large and vigorously as it has been, but with the conversations underway with Fred U. Harris Lodge, just by background, they had done it for 43 years out of pocket as a community service project.
Yeah.
Once it became a national holiday and the city partnered with them, it took on a whole different whatever. So with some leadership changes in Fred U. Harris and some other kind of discussions along the line that John's talking about, another whole set of conversations are underway to make sure that Lacey, city of Lacey and this community return to, the level of, not level of grandeur, but it did take place. It wasn't as large. Weather was a factor. Food galore as usual. But it did take place and, conversation is underway. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
I'll
it's
stop at that.
was a little disappointing because it was so successful. It was such a great event for the community. So, I mean, I just have to.
We aren't gonna let that go by the wayside.
I think I share your sentiments that it kind of feels like it came out of nowhere, but I would, yeah, it's important to remember that it's not something that the city did wrong, if I may speak. So it's important to keep that in mind. Even though it felt like that way to me whenever I first heard about it, and I was like, oh no, what have we done? What can we do better? What didn't we do? And I don't think that's necessarily the case. So I think that's just important to remember also.
It's gonna be all right.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, well, thank you. And LGBTQIA plus Pride Month proclamation. But Commissioner Clay and Higwood.
I'll let Commissioner Clay lead that.
Well, we together accepted it, and that was so happens at least for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, so it was nice to see it again and to be able to tell the council that we Lacey has stepped up in a number of ways in the last few years, and that people in Lacey know that we've heard them and are making some adjustments, and having the Friday night market was just so fun, and
So, yeah, it was great that we have that poster right there posted. A lot of people stopped by and really shared how they appreciate the fact that city is taking lead, creating really environment that was kind of welcoming for those folks. So I heard a lot of comments, and that was very nice.
We had spoken with our city manager whenever I think he was presiding as our staff liaison one time whenever Shannon was gone, about making those proclamations more visible. I know we have the one there, but something a bit more prominent. Not that it isn't in a place of prominence itself, but it itself being prominent. Cause it's rather a humble size at present, but that's okay.
I give you an update on that.
Okay, sure.
So we are printing out both of the proclamations that we brought to the booth at the Pride Night for the Lacey Night Market. And it's going to be, I think it was 26 by 36. Don't quote me on that. So big is what I will say. And so we're creating a copy that we can bring to events like that one, that's a little bit more permanent. And then we're also looking to hang one out here too the foyer of
Perfect.
City Hall. So stay tuned. Those are actively being worked on right now.
That was my suggestion to the city
Yeah,
manager, actually. It's just like,
Does that include the proclamation that was passed on hatred?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep,
that's
yep.
one of the two.
Hate and
Yeah.
transgender
Just
visibility.
That was
visibility.
there prominent at that
Yeah.
point.
Something that I've pondered since Commissioner Clay and I accepted the proclamation for Pride Month. We've been on the commission for 4 years now. Who's accepted previous years?
So that's actually a great question, and I think maybe to provide a clarification, this is the first year we've actually done the LGBTQIA plus Pride proclamation. We have done one previously, obviously transgender visibility, day visibility. But we looked back a couple of years and we didn't see one, and so this was the first year we had done it.
I was thinking people accepted it, but that was the transgender one.
It may have been, yeah, I believe, I think maybe you're thinking of the one at the county perhaps? Cause I know they were accepting that one for Pride Month the last few years now. So maybe that might be
Been
it.
here, but.
Okay. Yeah, that's was something I was wondering, and I guess it was a good question as it turns out. What do you know? You and I are the inaugural people accepting it on behalf of the.
City of Lacey is moving on things.
I mean, that's a little disappointing, I guess, that it's the first year, but I'm glad that we're doing it and we'll be doing it presumably again going forwards.
Before it was just getting the flag.
Right.
To be up, so, baby steps.
Yeah, I remember those discussions around updating our flag to the Pride Progress flag specifically. Because it was around the same time that we were having the Juneteenth flag thing, and I remember my hangup was, I'm all for us having the Juneteenth flag, but if we aren't representing queer people of color with our pride flag also, then that seems kind of hollow in my opinion. Or it's just more like performative and we're concerned about representing Juneteenth without actually representing the full spectrum of Black and African American communities, but I digress. Get off my soapbox.
Interesting, the next person that spoke after the Pride proclamation was the Thurston County Fair Board. And they said that they were going to fly the Pride flag at the fair, and that they were very, very interested in the fair being inclusive.
Oh, wow.
Well, so,
Let's see. I don't recall
They're
seeing it at the
thinking about it.
fairgrounds when I was there, but
That's good.
they had there was Thurston County Pride 2 weekends ago, not this weekend, but the one prior. But I don't recall if they had the pride flag flying or not. It was a rather intimate affair. But still a lot of fun.
All right, well, you can move right on to Pride Night at the Lacey Night Market.
yeah, we had a booth there. Many of us sat there at the booth and with the two proclamations very visible. I think people were really interested in both those and that it was happening. What I thought it was and what I thought was pretty interesting and pretty cool was that not every announcement about the night market said Pride themed. Some did, some didn't. So, and it's a very popular event. So there were people, I think, who came and they were like, oh, rainbows, and just found themselves in kind of a fun atmosphere and, just include everybody. It was kind of a really upbeat place, so.
Maybe I'll take a more cynical approach. I noticed the same thing, that some people seem like they kind of just found themselves amidst a bunch of rainbows. Some were glad to do that, and I think that I noticed some that perhaps weren't. And that's okay too.
It's good to.
But I also think that, yeah, it maybe is for the best, I guess, that it wasn't quite as well known, because then there's a lot of other factors that we don't take into consideration. But I definitely noticed some people that were visibly uncomfortable with all of the rainbows, myself
Made a
personally.
lot of people happy.
So, but yeah, we had a lot of great conversations. I mean, Commissioner Clay and I chatted with a bunch of folks. Lots of gays having a great time. Kieran has a statement also, it seems.
Kieran had.
Can you all hear me?
Yep.
All right. This was my first time at the night market. I was the very first shift with Veronica, and it was like surprising to me how many people showed up. I mean, I don't know what I was expecting, but it was a really, really cool event. And I know for a long time, like years and years ago, I would be talking with my friends about how we don't have like really places that the whole community can go to. So it's really cool to see that we have that.
Yeah, it's a very popular event. Also, there was the organizer for the Thurston Pride was there, and she was speaking with our city manager about doing a Pride event next year in city limits at the rec specifically. And it sounds like that's, I don't know if the city manager's reached out to you about making that contact for the parks piece, but she also has apparently already met with the mayor. I didn't realize this. And everybody's on board, so I guess we really just need to find a date, which is great. But
Yeah, LaDonna had called me previously and we'd connected her with our parks department, so they were having a conversation and I believe a tour of the rec.
that's right. Yeah, she messaged me, I wanna say last week, and she was like, well, I went there and I couldn't find anybody. Is it like, where's the office at? And I was like, it's just facility. You can just explore it and check it out and see what you think. She was like, oh, okay. I don't know what she was expecting, but I guess that wasn't it. But yeah, so that's exciting too, that that's a possibility for the future.
All right. Oh, I should send some photos to Shannon. Take some, we took photos with this wonderful shirts.
And the other city staffer that was there with us took a picture of Commissioner Clay and I was joking, I was like, oh, this is appropriate, we have the two gays here.
Great. Now we can move on to director's report. Shannon.
All right, I just have a couple of them. So number one, I've take a look at the doodle poll for the retreat and it looks like 4 commissioners have taken the doodle. So if you haven't taken the doodle,
It's like, cause I want, am I?
please
Fully?
go and take the doodle. So far, it looks like September 6th or September 13th are our leading candidates for the retreat. And so maybe if I could just see right now if anybody knows of any
6th would be-
conflicts
13th would be a conflict for me.
with that.
6th should be good.
September, what was that?
6th and-
September 6th, 9 AM to 1 PM. Any conflicts with that date? Maybe we can dial this in and get it on the calendar.
I may not be one of those who didn't doodle. Seem like I've done 4 or 5 doodles in the last couple. Yeah.
You might have just done that on the retreat.
But that's-
We've sent them out a
To be
few
fair, I
times.
think this is the second doodle you've sent out.
This is the third, I believe.
Third, okay,
Yep,
yeah.
So,
There's been a few.
yeah.
And
That's
they're way
fine.
down at the bottom of the email list, so now you can't find them.
So, September 6th, any objections? Kieran, looks like you got your hand up.
That's right before my birthday.
I have
Have cake.
not voted on the doodle, but I don't think I have to because I will not be there coming September. So just checking. That's like,
Oh, is this your senior year?
I'm not gonna be on the youth council next year.
Okay.
Yeah, August is my last meeting.
August, okay.
Well, congratulations. You'll be missed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So September 6th works for me.
Yeah, I
Me
didn't
too.
see, I don't see a doodle or
Yeah, they delete after
It was some time ago.
however long.
Oh, no, I got the first one in May, like the end of May,
Oh,
but
we were,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and you can find them in the recap emails too, just as another place in addition to where they come out. So you may not just see an invite for doodle, so just for awareness, but we'll put down 6th of September as the date for the retreat, and I'm glad we were able to set that in.
What time?
9 AM to 1 PM.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
And we'll start planning that and getting some
Do you have,
updates on what that looks like.
Tentative locations in mind?
Yeah, we have a couple. So there is the Lacey Veteran Services Hub in the upstairs, which I know you all have been as part of the last community forum. We have our community room over here. We have some options at the community centers, but those require rental fees. And so we'd have to kind of balance that. And so we're looking at one of those locations as possibilities.
That White House at the community center, do you have to? Rent that?
That could be a possibility, but they have some rec programming and we also use it for storage. So it kind of just depends on what the date looks like and without a
Little
date.
funky, yeah.
I have another suggestion for perhaps another two venues. One of them, Osho may be interested in hosting us in Tumwater, and then, cause that'd be a decent change of venue, and then also maybe perhaps the library also would be interested in hosting us also, cause they're a very enthusiastic partner in the past.
Yep,
Those may be two other options for us.
great. And I can look into all of those now that we have a date.
Yes,
So-
that's kind of the first part, yeah.
The Veterans Hub is available. It's a pretty setting. You think you're out of the city looking at the trees and free and all that kind of stuff, parking.
The reason why I suggest Osho specifically is just cause there's a restaurant on site and the food's amazing.
But we got a date. That's what's critical now.
I love that step. We got it.
Yeah,
We'll work,
yeah.
we can build on this.
Google
So-
shows you.
The other update I wanted to bring to your attention on the equity map, I know you all have been a part of helping build that and giving feedback, so we are actually taking it to council tomorrow for our kind of initial review. With the idea that we're hoping to get it out and available to community members this summer, so look for it in the next couple of weeks and I'll start sending an email out when we do. But we'll be having a discussion with the council at the work session tomorrow at 6 o'clock.
Would you like any of the commissioners to be present to weigh in or give commentary or?
Not at this particular meeting. I'm sure there'll be certain future opportunities, but we're just gonna kind of review what the history is in the background and then kind of what the process was and what it looks like in uses, which I know you all are very familiar with, having gone through several discussions here. My third item is the DEIB Advisory Board Regional Meeting update. I know this has been a big topic of conversation as one of the action items after the Thurston Forward Summit. And so I just wanted to let you all know that I did reach out to Thurston County to, circle back and say, looking for some updates because we want to get a date on paper because I know how long planning can be sometimes. I did throw out that we have a meeting on September 22nd. We also meet the same time that Olympia's Social Justice and Equity Advisory Board meets.
Oh, that's a
And
happy
so
coincidence.
maybe seeing if we could build something off of that momentum since we are typically together that night. So I will let you know when I get a response back from Thurston County, but just wanted to let you all know that I did reach out and the date was for September to connect with them on starting to plan that.
Yeah, we had spoken initially about it being, we just kind of said September, but then it was like the beginning of September, but that date actually would work better. It sounds like 'cause everybody already kind of has it chiseled out. And I think the other caveat I would like to mention was we were discussing the county hosting it at the county building.
Yep, and that's why I reached out to them of like, hey, I just want to follow up and make sure that we're moving forward, just knowing again how long it sometimes can take to
Volunteer
get a
to
date.
host.
Yep,
Yeah.
and happy to have them host. Just want to make sure we get it on the calendar sooner rather than later.
Mhm.
A little nudge.
Last thing I have here, and I actually have one additional item, just to wrap us up, but community forum updates. We haven't come back to you all about our veteran active duty and families forum yet, because Peyton, our intern, has been gone. They graduated from college and is coming back, but just taking some time off, has taken some time off. But is gonna be putting that together and they're gonna be coming to present to, she'll be here at the July meeting to present on that. So we haven't forgotten about it. I do wanna make sure that we report out on it. But I also wanted to make sure that Peyton Griffin got the opportunity as our intern to present to this group and get that experience while we're reporting out. I will also be reaching out to SPCC and St. Martin's about kind of the college students and vocational schools as well. So kind of getting that younger adult age to see if we can't schedule something. Unfortunately, it is the summer. And so waiting till fall semester probably makes the most sense. So I'm gonna be reaching out and looking tentatively for some time in October to schedule a meeting, hopefully at one of their sites and working through one of their events where we could do this same thing with college age students or young adults in their 20s. Just recognizing that that's a voice that we haven't heard from. And then we can again start going back and thinking about some other community forums that I know you all brought up, hearing from some community groups that we've heard from previously, so we can take a look at that again. The last thing I had isn't actually on here, but it was just, we did not get anybody for the July inspirational item. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to make sure that we got a name down here for any commissioners who wanted to provide that.
Anybody?
If there's no volunteers, I guess I can go again. Unless anybody else would like to go. I don't mind talking, but.
I'll do it.
Okay.
And Chair, that is the end of my report.
Could I ask, is there any update on the utility wraps?
Yes, actually, I can provide you an update on that. So we have, I think it is now 6 out of the 7 contracts back from our artists. And so we are hoping in the next couple of weeks that they will move forward and be installed, and I will report out when we do have an update on that, but they're much closer now. So we've worked through, we've got the contracts, got the signatures, we'll work on getting the students their stipend, and we'll be printing and getting those out in the community here shortly. And then hopefully going through another round and call for artists for some of the remaining concepts.
Right, great. Any other commissioners have any items to report? Oh,
Yes, I should have mentioned it after the
Uh-huh.
Juneteenth thing. But have any of you heard of the Alice Project by United Way? It is a powerful project that the United Way, I've been to 2 of the forums. And Alice stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. And they have put together a database that shows the condition of Thurston County in all the areas we've been concerned about: education, employment, housing, livability, and showing how such a huge portion of our population is underwater. The executive director of United Way makes a fabulous presentation. It would really benefit our commission, I think, if we could invite her to at least our September commission meeting. Our city manager, Rick, has been to both of those and he's heard those presentations. But it's amazing, the data they have put together, and we were talking about housing and affordability, they just really break it down. But it's the United Way of Thurston County, and they've got all these sponsors, Pack Mountain and all these folks. It would be, I think you would thoroughly enjoy. And as we're looking at our plan of work for the rest of this year in 2026, and as we are monitoring or looking at our strategic plan, Chris makes an awesome presentation that puts it all into perspective and show the degree to which we have deep problems in Thurston County and how systemic they are. And how we are tinkering around the edge in our HR grants, in our whatever, because she has all these maps and all this data to show how much the money has increased, how many more programs have come on board, but how the progress of people has declined, not improved. So they're asking the question, what are we doing wrong as a community if we're doing all these things, yet circumstances and situations aren't getting any better? She touches upon education, not to mention the housing, the employment, the whole livability issue, all the stuff we've been talking about in our 4 goals. But I would strongly recommend if we could get on her calendar as a presenter for our September meeting. I think it would really catapult us into the next scenario of discussion that we as an equity, she puts equity in a whole different limelight. And it's something I'd love, if our city manager, Rick, could be here for it, and we have a room full of people to hear her presentation, but it's so nicely done. But United Way is changing their whole way of doing business because they point out the millions they give out every year to, but then she shows where we aren't making a difference. The situation is going in the opposite direction, and we've got to call a halt to it and determine what we must do differently, because what we're doing isn't working. And it just blew me away. It just absolutely blew me away.
What is her name again?
Her name, Chris Wells. She's the executive director of United Way of Thurston County, and it's called the Alice Summit. and a packed room over at South Puget Sound Community College Lacey branch, and they had a follow-up last week updating the data. We would be we would benefit greatly from what Chris could share with us. And the United Way is trying to raise the community's consciousness level of, as we're growing and expanding, we have some real problems. So it was like, whoa.
That's what I was thinking, is that we should be inviting them to the table also for our summit planning. To inform what we're doing as far as programmatic features are concerned and what communities are reaching out to, and what conversations are being had, what workshops are doing, and all of these other things that could be really informed by the data that they've already coalesced.
But I
together.
tell you, there's so many audiences they need to
Oh,
be
I-
invited to.
I
Once you
don't
hear
doubt it.
them, yeah, because all this DEI stuff we're talking about, it just looks like a child's marble game when you hear the severity of the problem. I mean, accessibility to healthcare, and I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Thousands more folk needing, and how long it's taken a person to make an appointment with a primary care physician, and the overload in the emergency rooms because people can't find primary care. I mean, they have really put some time and energy into some data gathering that just changes the whole landscape.
So is it like a local data or is it kind of a nationwide and it's specific?
It's all of the above. She'll show the national picture, the state picture, county by county, and come right on down to Thurston, bring it home.
And they're the one who's actually did all this research or were they getting it from?
Every source they could find.
So.
Every source they could find. And so I would just strongly recommend Chris Wells, Executive Director of United Way of Thurston County, to give us a presentation on the
Do
Alex.
they have a message? I know that the message as far as what is that we need to do now, because we are working, we're trying to make a difference. But if it looks like a child marble play, what kind of a suggestion or proposal do they have? I mean, do they have
We can
something?
get into that discussion.
Okay.
But you know, it's a consciousness raising thing that just causes you to just say, whoa, you know?
Sounds like that might be like a full agenda kind of discussion, not a line item on whatever.
But at least as a program presenter, a guest presenter,
Sure.
at least our September meeting, get over the summer, maybe she's more available. And then we see where we go from there with the questions, you know, where are you all going from here? And
Yeah, so I'd like to know that, because I mean, it's just,
they take it on down to that, so.
The website's incredibly.
Oh, okay.
Were you there?
Yeah, I was just looking it up. So if you go to the Alice tool, they have the data sheets as well as different mapping tools and reports that you can access.
okay, so you just go Alice Summit and then.
Yeah, I just
Okay.
Google will.
Yeah, I'll look.
Were you at the summit?
And I
No,
can,
I just.
Oh,
did it
okay.
I
right
can
now.
follow up in the follow-up email, just to make sure we all have the link there too. I mean,
great.
you can
Okay,
take a
thank
look
you.
for it, but I think that's great.
And check Rick, see what Rick's reaction to it, because he's been, all the city managers, elected officials, I mean, the room is just full of all the decision makers, county commissioners, and
That makes sense.
we're all just sitting back saying, whoa.
That makes
But
sense.
the United Way has taken this on, and they've done a very in-depth
'Cause
project.
I was curious about their data too, because you know, in our equity index mapping tool, you know, I think there is some implicit bias in asking census data that is national. So I am curious what their data sets look like and how that is reflecting compared to an equity index tool and using it, you know, in conjunction.
That's all I had to add. Thank you.
I also had something. Has anybody here heard of Her Space by chance here in Lacey?
First base.
First
Yeah,
Space,
First-
HER space.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, the-
isn't it
the
right
res-
here? It's not that far.
Yeah, it's off of
Yeah.
Carpenter. I discovered it 2 weeks ago. I went there last week. It is a women entrepreneur business maker space.
Oh, okay.
And kind of like a showcase venue. It's two sisters that run it, that are also women entrepreneurs, and they have tons of other business ventures. But they host like workshops there to like teach women in business skills. Or like people who are just like looking for like part-time kind of stuff that they could like maybe sell on Etsy, or even like they did classes on crypto whenever I was there. They had just finished up a class on crypto for women interested in getting into that. So there's all kinds of stuff happening there, right in our own backyard that I lived 5 minutes down the road. I had no idea it was there. It's behind the reserve where the old Albertsons used to be on the corner of Carpenter and Pacific
Oh, the
there.
reserve housing.
Yep, the senior living center. It's
It's free for me.
it's a little plaza right there. Yeah, I live 5 minutes down the road. I had no idea either. I could walk to it.
So how are they like participation wise as far as the size of their group?
So the space is maybe a half to a third of this. It's in a strip mall, and half of the space is like a little meeting conference area, and then the other half is like showcasing women businesses that do like consignment or whatever, have their business products shown up there, and then they have even like a resident business that's like in the back, making like little treats, and they have like women market nights every other Friday, I believe, that goes on there. Whenever I was there, it wasn't very well attended, but I don't know if that's always the case. The weather wasn't super great, so who knows? But anyway, these are like regular things that happen that are in our own backyard. And there's certainly a lot of opportunities for collaboration, if not for us to, work with them to help them be successful and to bring more people into the fold on that conversation. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention that this exists in our backyard in case people weren't aware of it. Like I wasn't, and I wanted to slap myself in the face because I couldn't believe I had no idea this existed. So, yeah.
I'm certainly not gonna do it because I didn't know about it.
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I hadn't been or seen,
Yep.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to get to know them. I
Yeah,
mean,
there's a
they're
lot
the
happening
target
there.
audience that they're.
Exactly.
women.
Which actually on that subject, maybe another group of community people we can hear from next in our listening forums would be our women community. 'Cause that's one we haven't honed in on yet. So not that we haven't heard from women in other forums, but we haven't heard specifically in the context of a women's forum or women identifying or people that are assigned women at birth or female at birth, excuse me. So a lot of opportunities there.
Alrighty. Okay, well, anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, I think we're done then. If there is no other business, I adjourn the Commission on Equity meeting and 7:11 PM. Wow, how this happened?
Have a lot of in-depth